Hi everyone, welcome to Bible Blast and Lesson 19. We are continuing with our account of Moses. So Moses lived in Midian for 40 years, and he looked after his father-in-law's sheep. Well, one day he took the sheep to Mount Horeb, and Mount Horeb is also known as the mountain of the Lord. And he saw an amazing sight. He saw a bush that was burning, and yet it wasn't burning up. And so he said, I'm going to turn aside and see this great thing. And as he approached the burning bush, the voice of the Lord spoke to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. And the Lord said, Take off your sandals, for the ground on which you are standing is holy ground. And so Moses took off his sandals and bowed himself down to the earth and was afraid to look at the Lord. And the Lord said to him, I have heard the cries of my people Israel, who are in bondage in Egypt. I am going to set them free and give them the land that I promised to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And he said to Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh and bring my people out. And Moses said, Well, who am I that I should speak to Pharaoh? And the Lord said to Moses, I will be with you. And Moses said, Well, if they ask who sent me, who should I say has sent me? And the Lord said, I am that I am. Tell them I am has sent you. And Moses said, Well, what if the people don't believe that I talk to you? And the Lord said to Moses, What is that in your hand? And Moses said, It's a rod. And the Lord said, Cast it down on the ground. And so Moses did that. And when he did so, it turned into a snake. And Moses tried to get out of the way of the snake. And the Lord said, Now reach out and catch the snake by the tail. And so Moses did that. And when he did so, the snake turned back into his rod. And the Lord said, Put your hand inside your breast. Now take it out. And when he did so, Moses saw that his hand was leprous. And the Lord said, Now put it back in there. So Moses did so. And when he brought it back out, it was normal again. And the Lord said to Moses, Do these signs in front of the elders of Israel, and they will believe you. And Moses said, Well, I'm not a very good speaker. I'm very slow of speech. And the Lord said to him, Well, who is it that makes a man's mouth? Is it not I, the Lord? I'm going to teach you what to say. And Moses said, You should pick somebody else. And the Lord became angry and said, Are you not Aaron's brother? Aaron speaks well, and I will send him, and he will help you. And so Moses went to his father-in-law, Jethro, and said, I need to go to Egypt. And Jethro said to him, Go, you have my blessing. And so Moses took his wife and their 2 sons, and they headed toward Egypt. And on the way they met Aaron, and they were glad to see one another, because it had been a very long time. So let's just look at our pictures. There we have Moses looking at the burning bush. And here is the picture of Moses and the serpent. And then over here, there's a picture of Moses and Aaron speaking to the elders of Israel and all the people. And when the people heard that God had sent Moses and Aaron to set them free, they rejoiced and worshiped the Lord. And so Moses and Aaron went to see Pharaoh. And they said to Pharaoh, "These are the words of the God of Israel. Let my people go, so that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and nor will I let Israel go." And so Pharaoh said to the people of Israel, "Now you can continue making your bricks, but you're going to do so without straw. You can find your own straw." And so the taskmasters were very, very cruel to the people of Israel. And they cried to Moses and Aaron and said, "Now look what's happened because of you two." And so Moses cried out to the Lord and said, "Are you going to help your people?" And the Lord answered and said, "The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt and bring the children of Israel out from among them." So there's a picture of the taskmasters being cruel to the children of Israel. But God was going to make sure that all of the false gods that the Egyptians worshipped would be shown to have no power and would be no match for the one true God. So Moses and Aaron went back to see Pharaoh, and they asked again if he would let the people go, and he said, "No, I will not." And so Moses asked Aaron to cast down his rod, and as he did so, it turned into a serpent. And Pharaoh said, my magicians can do that trick." And so he called his magicians, and they cast down their rods, and their rods also turned into snakes. But Aaron's snake gobbled up the other snakes. Now Moses and Aaron appeared before Pharaoh the next day as Pharaoh was coming down to the river, and they asked that he let the people go. And again he said, "I'm not letting the people go." And so Moses asked Aaron to touch the river, and the river turned to blood, and all of the fish died, and there was a terrible stink throughout all the land of Egypt, and the Egyptians had no water to drink for a whole week. And Pharaoh hardened his heart, and he said, "I will not let the people go." And so the next plague to come was the plague of frogs. Aaron touched the river, and the frogs all came up out of the Nile and went into the houses of the Egyptian people, and they were in their closets and in their beds and in their ovens and in their feeding bowls. It was disgusting. And Pharaoh said to Moses, "Ask your God to call off the frogs, and then I'll let the people go." So when Moses spoke to God and asked him to stop the frogs from coming, then Pharaoh changed his mind and said, "No, I'm not letting the people go." There is a picture of Pharaoh with the snakes. And over here, we have a picture of all of the frogs. And when the frogs died, there was another terrible stink in Egypt. Well, Pharaoh had a hard heart, and he wouldn't let the people go. And the next plague to come was the plague of lice. And the people of Egypt were scratching themselves, but it didn't make a difference. Pharaoh would not let the people go. And the next plague to come was the plague of flies. And there were flies everywhere in Egypt, except the people of Goshen, the Israelites, they had no flies where they were. And Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let the people go. And so the next plague to come was a plague upon the cattle. And all of the cattle of Egypt died. But the cattle that belonged to the Israelites did not die. And so the next plague was a plague of boils. And the Egyptians had boils all over their bodies, and they were in so much pain. But Pharaoh would not let the children of Israel go free. The plague after that was a plague of hail, and hail fell from heaven, and there was fire that ran along the ground. And the officers of Pharaoh, who feared the Lord, brought their servants and cattle inside. But the officers who did not fear the Lord, they let their servants and their people stay outside, and the cattle stayed outside. And so they all died when the hail fell. And still Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let the people go. So there's what happened with the hail. All the cattle and the people died. The next plague to come was the plague of locusts. And the locusts ate up all the vegetation, the plants, the herbs, the leaves, everything that had not already been destroyed by the hail. And still the Pharaoh would not let the people go. And after that, there was the plague of darkness. And the darkness was so thick and heavy it could be felt. In fact, the Egyptians couldn't even see their own hands in front of their faces. But the Israelites had light in their homes. And after 3 days, the darkness left. And Moses went back to see Pharaoh one more time. And he told him about the final and most terrible plague that was coming. And so Moses told the words of the Lord to Pharaoh. And he said, about midnight I will go out into Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn child of Pharaoh upon his throne to the firstborn of the maidservant at the mill, and all the firstborn of cattle. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as was never heard before, and shall never be again. But none of the children of Israel shall suffer in any way, neither they nor their animals. Thus you shall see how the Lord has put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And Moses went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. But Pharaoh's heart was still hardened, and he would not let the children of Israel go. Can you believe that? Pharaoh has seen all the plagues happen. He's seen the power of the Lord. And now he has heard the final and terrible warning that even his own child would die. But his heart is hard and he will not bend. How sad. And so Moses called for all the elders of Israel and spoke to them the command of the Lord. Take a lamb from your flocks according to the size of your families and kill it. Take a bunch of herbs and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike with the blood the top and the 2 side posts of the doorways of your houses. And none of you shall go out of his house until morning. You shall roast the lamb and shall eat the meat with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. And when you eat of it, you shall be ready to depart, with the shoes on your feet and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood upon the doortop and on the 2 side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow death to come into your houses to strike you. That meant the Lord would pass over the threshold into their houses and not allow the destroyer to come in. And that's how he saved the Israelites. And it came to pass at midnight that the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn child of Pharaoh on his throne to the firstborn of the captive in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, Rise up and get out from among my people, both you and all the children of Israel, and go worship the Lord as you have asked, and take your flocks and herds as you asked, and be gone. And the Egyptians urged the people and tried to send them out of the land in haste. For they said, "We are all dead men." And so all of the Israelites took all of their families and all of their herds and flocks and all of their belongings, and they went out of Egypt. The children of Israel had been living in Egypt for 430 years, and now they were free. Please come back tomorrow and find out what happens with Moses and the children of Israel. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.